Welcome to the bylaw submissions panel dealing with the vexing issue of keeping of animals bylaw 2023. A few housekeeping matters and then we'll launch into it. There's 3 public submitters today. They are CANS, Companion Animals NZ, and Amelia Geary from Forest and Bird, and Barry Foster, who I see is present in the back of the courtroom. I'm Councillor Tony Robinson. To my left is Councillor Debbie Gregory. To my right is Councillor Nick Tupara, and we comprise the Bylaws Hearing Committee. How the process works is we have received in written submissions, and we will receive oral submissions today from the submitters. We will then have, with the assistance of staff, a deliberation process where we deliberate. We then write a recommendation which goes up to the full council to then vote on how the bylaw should look. So the 3 of us come here today with an open mind and impartial and ready to receive and be wowed by your submissions. And it's pretty much the housekeeping things. In the event of emergency, exit signs behind you, and we get together outside the rose garden. Please make sure your cell phones are off and your computer doesn't go bing. And now we'll probably hear from Amelia first. Oh, do the. Okay, sorry. I just noticed I haven't done the apologies and everything else. So I'll run through the technical, formal requirements of an official meeting. So apologies, there are none. Declarations of interest. Leave of absence is, if you're not here, can you please put your hand up? No. Acknowledgements and tributes, there are none. Public input and petitions, other than the submissions, there are none. Extraordinary business. Notices of motion, none. Adjourned business, none. Right, we now start at page 2 of the agenda, which is the reports of the Chief Executive and the public submission. So we will commence the submission process by calling submitter number 21, Mr. Barry Foster. Come on down, Barry.
Make a start, can I?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You've got 5 minutes, but actually you've got really as long as you need, to be brutally honest.
5 minutes of questions afterwards, maybe?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me along, councillors and staff. Happy to be here and to talk about the bylaw as regards bees in the urban environment. So where do I point this? Oh, yeah. So, first one, what is a beehive? And in legal terms in our industry, we have an order in council that under the Biosecurity Act that manages a disease called American foul brood. And within that, there's that definition there written up. They talk about, just in clarification, about queen introduction or mailing cages. They're only small things about the size of 2 matchboxes, which we use to transport queen bees and a few attendants around the world. We don't really need to worry about that. Different sizes of hives. I've just got an example in the photo there. To the left is a full-size hive, 3 boxes high. To the right is what we call a nucleus colony. The one on the left might have 50 or 60,000 bees in it. The one on the right might have 5,000. So it's different management, different times of the year. So my point being, don't just set limits on your numbers of boxes per hive. Don't get so prescriptive like that. Next one. So keeping bees in the residential zones. For management purposes, keeping 2 hives per site in a residential zone or anywhere is quite good for the beekeeping practice of swapping gear around and whatever. But it's not necessarily, we submit to prescribe numbers per square metre or by location. Leave that up to the beekeepers to do. Reason being, bees will spread over a wide area. They'll forage over 4 to 5 kilometres. That's over 70 square kilometres. So you're talking about metres. Yeah, it's ridiculous, really. So, and they're dynamic. As I say, look at the previous photo there, they'll different sizes, different types of at different times of the year or per management. Certain councils don't prescribe, and I've got them listed there, like Hamilton, Tauranga, Wellington, Hutt. They don't have stipulations on hive numbers per property or size. Benefits of having a beekeeping in the urban area. Well, many hobby beekeepers, many commercial beekeepers started out as hobbyists, and they gained experience and knowledge on that and got to like it. It's a very rewarding hobby. And as I mentioned earlier, there's the pollination benefits extend 4 to 5K at least. We also, MPI, monitor hives in urban areas, particularly near airports and seaports for biosecurity purposes. So they're useful for that alone. So we're submitting that to focus on the nuisance angle instead, and really on a case-by-case basis, but looking more on the presence rather than the numbers of hives. And it's things like people getting in the way of the flight path in and out, or the washing line of the neighbours over the fence. Bees will avoid, they'll defecate within 20 metres of the hive. So I guess if you've got your washing line in the flight path of that, yes, you're probably going to get spots on it. And hopefully you won't get stung. But a way to mitigate it is to have boundary fences, or better still, vegetation, preferably 1.8 or 2 metres high, and preferably on 3 sides. The idea is to lift the bees as they leave the hive up over the heads of people, or any issues like that. So, put here. So yeah, bees will respond to any perceived threats of the hive, and that could be even things like you using a weed eater within a metre of the hive, or thumping the ground, or that sort of thing. So the idea is to diminish the potential interaction between members of the public, other people, or things you don't want spotted up between hives and them. So it's those barriers, natural fix, that really work well. As I mentioned, fencing or planting 3 sides around a hive works well. 1.0 or 2 metre fence on 3 sides works well, but also really important, talk to your neighbours, communicate with your neighbours. That's really important. Beekeepers try to prevent swarming, because that means half their hives taken off into the hills. So that they do at times. I'm not sure if council has a contact list of beekeepers. It's probably quite useful to have one. Certainly Citizens Advice does, and they contact us. And you really need experienced beekeepers to pick up these things. So yeah, hives are registered, have to be registered with under the law, but council doesn't need to worry about that. Apiculture New Zealand, which I'm a member, has a voluntary code of practice under that list in there too. So this is an example of my own backyard here. The neighbour's place, as it's facing next door there, there's a driveway to the right there, if you can see that sort of thing. Bees are exiting the hive, and you might be able to see some little white dots there around pointing. They're flying out way up over the fence, and they definitely don't go to the right. There's enough vegetation around that to contain at least that hive, or maybe another one. I wouldn't probably put too many in there, but it's definitely containing it. So it's just an example. Oh, sorry.
And taking the bees camping.
Taking the bees camping, yeah. It wouldn't be so bad to get those off there as you might think. It looks like a disaster, Bill, but I'm sure this is where experience and knowledge comes. And the guy on the ground there, he's going to hive that swarm there. But as I say, yeah, people who are experienced and can work these things, we can pick them up. So another really important point, I've been an ambassador and worked with the Trees for Bees research project for quite a few years now. And that's just a list of plants that are good for bees and also good for us, good fruits and vegetables, good herbs, some great native plants out to the right there. So this beautifies your own garden. They can feed the bees, it feeds us. Just an example of that. Finishing off here, that's a supermarket there that's full of all the things we like to eat, like apples there, onions over there, there might be some carrots over here, perhaps avocados or berry fruit there, can't see. So we know bees, a third of our diet roughly is directly related to pollination. So without pollination, the supermarket will look like that. So it's rather a Spartan diet. So that's the importance of bees in the general environment, but also in the urban environment as well. So that's really the end of it there. Any questions? And that's just a shot of some hives in Auckland there. I'm a chair of a local hub of Apiculture New Zealand. My colleague John Kai is down the back here. We also members of the Science and Research Focus Group of Apiculture New Zealand. We'd be happy to work with councillors or staff to get some wording around there, but something in my submission here that you could certainly use, but happy to do it and happy to take questions.
Councillor Gregory, do you have any questions for Barry?
Thank you, yes. Thank you, Barry. That's all excellent information. When you say every beekeeper needs a license, even backyard beekeepers, do they have to have a license?
Not a license as such, they need to be registered.
Oh, registered.
It's really, we have a disease called American foul brood, and it's controlled by an order of council under the Biosecurity Act, very much similar to the TB regulations. And we need to know where all our hives are and who owns them. There's a number on all the hives somewhere. You probably saw those ones in my photos. There's a number. So it needs to be registered with MPI, not only for American foul brood, but for exotic diseases as well. We know where they are, at least we can delimit if there's an outbreak.
And so do you find that is the case that every beekeeper registers their hives?
Most beekeepers register it. It's breaking the law if you're not.
Okay.
And there are consequences of that. And there are consequences for the country if they're not registered. Best example of that was like 23 years ago when they found Varroa in Auckland. They did the limiting survey around the greater Auckland area, and they found like something like 12,000 hives not registered. So with that amount of unregistered hives out there, they had no hope of containing it. So it's really important to.
And also just the nuisance factor of bee poo, I suppose it is. Is it just at certain times of the year that's a problem? Or?
No, they're always defecating, but the numbers of the hives, they're in small amounts in winter, so 20,000, rise up to about 60,000 in the summer. So you've got that elevation, and if they're working more flowers like in the spring, obviously things are happening.
Thank you.
Answer your questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Tupara.
Thank you for your submission, Barry. I just have one. In a urban area, is there ever a possibility that we could have too many hives and that there's insufficient environment to cater for them?
Yes, that could happen. But that's a beekeeper problem. And indeed, that last slide there, those two hives sitting on the top of the Grand Millennium in Auckland may be in that situation. But then again, you look at it, 4 to 5K from the Grand Millennium in Auckland, there's probably a lot of gardens around there. So as a general rule, bees do quite well in the urban environment, mainly because of the diversity of forage and amount of it as well. But diversity is really important.
Barry, I've got a few questions. Do you know how many hives are registered in the Gisborne city boundary, within the Gisborne city boundary?
No, I don't. That sort of information would be held by
MPO.
the management agency, and they keep that to themselves for a lot of reasons. You know, it's personal information. But yes, they wouldn't have that data, and so would MPI.
All right.
Get that.
You did submit that not set a limit on the number of boxes in a hive,
Yeah.
but there must be a practical number that you wouldn't want to exceed.
Oh,
And the example is if we said, okay, bylaw is going to say 2 hives per property, so someone goes, great, I have a 30-box hive and a 30-box hive.
yeah. Well, that would self-limit around the physical limits of the beehive itself, but also the beekeeper. You know, he wouldn't want a hive 10 boxes high because he'll never get it filled with honey. It's just physically impossible for them to fill that. So, as a general rule, New Zealand's set on that type of box you saw in the
First line,
photo there.
3-box, it's a 3-box, was it a 3-box hive? It
Oh,
was a
that
2-box.
3-box hive, but you know, as a general rule, you might winter at 1 or 2 boxes, and have a 3rd box on later for getting honey.
Right,
But that's all management.
yeah, but and that's the purpose of the bylaw, to work out a manageable framework within which
Yeah,
we don't have to worry about.
yeah, and I submit that the manageable framework is around nuisance and barriers to causing nuisance, to lift that flight path out of harm's way, so to speak. And keep it a little bit away from the edge of the property, barriers, that sort of thing. It simplifies things. If you start to get too prescriptive, numbers of hives, numbers of boxes, or,
No, Debbie, Councillor Gregory asked my question about the registration. Thank you very much for your submission.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Dr. Olson. Geary, no.
Yeah, but she's showing currently. Oh, there she is.
Morning.
Yeah.
Afternoon, sorry.
Good evening. I'm not sure we time zone you're in.
No, we've had a few rattles around our area, so I'm not sure where I'm at either.
Well, kia ora, welcome to the Bylaws Hearing Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou, my name is Sarah Olson. I'm the Welfare Manager for Companion Animals New Zealand. Companion Animals New Zealand has made a written submission on the top of cat management in the Gisborne district, and we appreciate the chance to talk to you directly about this today. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about our organisation's credentials and why Gisborne District Council should include cat desexing, microchipping and registration in your revised bylaw. Companion Animals New Zealand is a registered animal welfare charity supported by 6 core stakeholders. These include the Royal New Zealand SPCA, New Zealand Veterinary Association, the New Zealand Institute of Animal Management, who are the membership group for the nation's control officers, New Zealand Veterinary Nurses Association, plus Dogs NZ and New Zealand Cat Fancy, who represent registered pedigree dog and cat breeders respectively. We take a science-based approach to animal welfare advocacy. Our charity also owns and manages the New Zealand Companion Animal Register. The register is Aotearoa's microchip database for all types of pets. It's the primary way cats can be positively identified and returned to their human home. We use funds from the register to support desexing and microchipping campaigns, undertake research, and advocate for a better life for companion animals. You may be aware that New Zealand has one of the highest rates of pet ownership in the world. While our organisation celebrates this fact, the truth is we also have some concerns. We're not so much interested in New Zealanders having high numbers of pets. Instead, we advocate for responsible companion animal guardianship. That means we'd like to see all cats living in a human household and being cared for to a high standard. In other words, being happy and healthy at home. Companion Animals New Zealand advises all local authorities to include cat management in their local bylaws. A cat can get pregnant at 4 months of age. They can have 4 kittens per litter and 3 litters per year. So it's easy to see how overpopulation of cats can happen so quickly. Undesexed cats are more likely to wander, more likely to become feral or stray, more likely to engage in fighting, to produce offspring that wind up in animal shelters where they take up human and financial resources. Importantly, feral cats, those who have no interaction with humans, need to catch wildlife to survive. We strongly recommend your council introduces compulsory desexing, except for those cats purposely kept for breeding, for all cats older than 4 months of age. However, we have a problem. Currently, there's no National Cat Management Act to enforce in the way that there is a Dog Control Act. I'm here to encourage Gisborne District Council to lead from the front in this issue. The responsible ownership of all companion animals shouldn't just be a matter for enforcement. It's a matter of doing what's right and improving the culture of pet ownership in New Zealand. Coupled with owner education, other councils around New Zealand are making headway in this space, while our organisation and others like us petition central government to implement a National Cat Management Act to make enforcement easier for your staff. But central government wheels often turn slowly. The Companion Animal Register provides an avenue for identification of cats. Gisborne District Council already has an account to use our register, so owners of wandering, undesexed cats may be able to be found and educated about a revised bylaw. As such, we encourage Gisborne District to adopt similar policies to other councils and make cat microchipping and registration compulsory as well. Despite a lack of enforcement tools, Wellington City Council saw a 100% increase in cat microchipping when introducing similar measures back in 2018. They report benefits to local wildlife and they appreciate the ability to differentiate between owned and unowned cats. Companion Animals New Zealand supports councils who introduce bylaws that promote better cat welfare. We do this by investing in public awareness campaigns in local media, lowering costs at local vet clinics with microchip and registration promotions, and we can also provide cat management training to your animal control officers. Since Wellington in 2018, we've also worked with Palmerston North, Wanganui, Selwyn, Whangarei and Ruapehu district councils to implement mandatory microchipping, desexing and registration. To reiterate, we encourage Gisborne District Council to include compulsory desexing, microchipping and registration for cats over 4 months of age. Despite the challenges of enforcement, these measures would protect local wildlife, help ensure all cats have a happy and safe home, show leadership to your constituents and central government, promoting a culture of responsible pet ownership in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Gregory, any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, you were saying you've been working with other councils. So are you saying that those other councils have introduced cat mandatory desexing and chipping?
Microchipping, yes, yes. So we've currently got, I think there are 5 or 6, the ones I previously mentioned, have introduced mandatory microchipping and registration. And I think all but 2 of them have also introduced mandatory desexing. So we're constantly lobbying for this whenever a bylaw comes up. And we're hoping that the more councils that take this on, the more aware people will become, and it will normalise the behaviour of pet owners to see that this is a standard thing. That's, you know, part of what you have to do to be a responsible pet owner is to desex and microchip your animal.
Thank you.
Councillor Tupara.
Thank you for your submission, Sarah. I do note, following on from Councillor Gregory's inquiry, the cats that aren't compliant, those councils that have adopted a mandatory approach to this, are there penalties associated with non-compliance that you're aware of from those councils?
I don't know. There's not as such. I don't think it's enforceable in terms of penalties. I think you can't, there is no way of enforcing that unless it breaches the Animal Welfare Act. It's more that it sets a standard and creates that expectation of what pet owners need to do to, you know, to have the privilege of owning a pet. They need to be able to meet these standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation. The cost of desexing, I imagine it varies from region to region, and as you all know, our region is a high deprivation area. So, you know, families are struggling here at the moment. So can you give us a bit of an indication, your experience, the cost of desexing, say in Wellington versus Whangarei?
I'm not sure about the regional differences, but and it varies a lot between the different clinics as well. So it probably ranges for males. I think it's about $80 to $100 for male cats, and around 150 to 200 for females. Having said that, there are a lot of desexing campaigns around. The SPCA run the Snip and Chip campaign. They have mobile desexing caravans that go throughout the country. Our organisation puts aside I think it's about $130,000 a year to assist a trust that they give out in grants for desexing. The vets themselves are often subsidised heavily. They subsidise the cost of desexing heavily. So it's all about doing what we can to get these animals desexed and to help control the problem. And there are ways around that for sure.
From your experience, the different councils that have brought in the mandatory microchipping and registration of cats, has it generally been a staged approach?
Yes. So they give them, you know, they advertise, well, they inform the public that this is going to be happening, and then there's a certain time lag between where it's enforced. And as I mentioned before with Wellington, I can't remember the time frame. It may have been around 6 months or something, but we saw a massive increase in people getting their animals microchipped and desexed during that time period. And as I said, Companion Animals New Zealand works with the council, and we offer free microchipping and registration with those vet clinics to people that bring their animals in for other surgeries or checkups, so that's heavily subsidised. So there's a window there for people to get that at a much reduced rate as well.
Right. Thank you. I don't have any questions. Thank you very much for your comprehensive submissions. We have read them. We had read them beforehand. Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Amelia. Can you hear me, Amelia?
Loud and clear.
Hello.
Hello.
The floor is yours, Amelia.
I apologize if I look grumpy. I'm looking straight into the sun, so I'm squinting.
You're angry bird.
Yeah, that's right. That's me.
That was a forest and bird reference, by the way, not a derogatory term for a woman.
Not be mistaken. Tēnā koutou katoa. As you know, ko Amelia Geary aho, no te reo o te taiao, ara ko Forest and Bird aho. Thank you for hearing me. I'd like to start by acknowledging the presence of Grant Vincent, the chair of Gisborne Forest and Bird, who's there in the chambers, and as well as Barry Foster, who spoke earlier, who's also a member of Forest and Bird in Gisborne. I'd just like to also endorse what Sarah said from Companion Animals New Zealand, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end of this. I'd like to start by giving you a picture of my experience with animals bylaws. In the last 2 years, I've been involved directly or indirectly with every single animals bylaw notified in the country, bar 2. I also presented to the Environment Committee of Parliament last year about the need for a Cat Management Act. So I feel like I have quite a bit of experience with this very narrow field of local government. I note that Gisborne District Council did not run any form of survey of the community ahead of this process, aside from a very specific survey regarding beekeeping, nor did it consult a focus group or gauge any concerns the public might have regarding nuisance in Gisborne. And in my experience, most councils do run this form of pre-consultation because then they draft a bylaw that's most appropriate to the district. And in my experience, every single council that surveys the community ahead of notifying its animals bylaw has cats raised as a topic of concern, from stray cat colonies, people illegally dumping in public reserves, nuisance cats, defecating in sand pits, tomcats fighting at night. The list is endless, and cat nuisance is a genuine concern across New Zealand, and simply having a generic nuisance clause in your bylaw does not go far enough to truly address the issue. Furthermore, as we stated in our submission, you're undermining your own regional pest management plan by not regulating cat ownership, thereby making the job of council biosecurity officers much harder to manage a non-pest. Council has every ability to introduce rules specific to cats in this bylaw, as demonstrated by many other councils who have done exactly that, as mentioned by Companion Animals New Zealand just now. In fact, GDC's enforcement officers need stronger regulation so that when a nuisance occurs, they have the power to actually reduce the nuisance. When cats aren't microchipped, for example, the officers won't have any way of knowing who owns the nuisance cats. Thereby, their ability to abate the nuisance is much more difficult. Similarly, research has indicated that return to owner rates for cats that are microchipped is 20 times higher than for cats that are not microchipped. I'd also like to point out that cat regulation is not a big deal. Not only is it desired by the community, it's also well supported. So just to give you an example, in Whangarei last year, a district that has a very bad cat problem, their statement of proposal invited community views on matters relating to the keeping of cats and feedback on the possible cat options for cat management. And in response, of the 1,412 submissions received, 1,287 supported compulsory microchipping and registering of cats, and 1,318 supported desexing. On the 26th of May last year, Whangarei District Council voted to introduce mandatory microchipping and desexing into its keeping of animals bylaw. I suggest that the process run by Gisborne District Council has done a disservice to the district's residents, because by only consulting on a very narrow provision regarding nuisance, residents weren't even really aware that animals bylaws are in fact a very appropriate place to regulate cats specifically, and that many councils are regulating cats through their animals bylaws, and that strict regulation is being passed in other districts, and no one is batting an eyelid. And you'll find that Forest and Bird and the animal protection groups like SPCA and Companion Animals New Zealand are actually all on the same page, as evidenced by our very similar submissions. We all want the best outcomes for cats. Forest and Bird just wants them managed such that their impact on our wildlife is minimised. So we're calling on you to include stricter cat regulation in this bylaw and not fall behind those councils showing genuine leadership in this space. That's all I really had to say. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you didn't have your grumpy face on when you told us that. Amelia, thank you very much for your written submissions. We have all read them beforehand, and your oral submissions. I can tell you that your submissions have provoked, both yours, SPCA's and CAN's, has provoked a train of thought amongst us that has resulted in inquiry with our staff to see whether we can expand the bylaw process to include cat management provisions. And we're looking at that, and we think our SOP is probably broad enough to do that, but we may have to go back out to the community consultants. So your words prompted thought and has prompted action. So without predetermining how that might look, that is me as chair. That is the position I've arrived at after reading your submissions. Really want to thank you for your time. I want to acknowledge the caliber and quality of your submissions. And it's, as a lawyer, as a previous lawyer, it's always lovely to see when people provide you wording for legislation, just cut and paste. That's really great. So I don't have any questions of you. I suppose the only question I would ask, but it's really relevant, was which councils have introduced it. But your whangarei example, you know, whangarei mirrors Te Tairawhiti in a lot of ways with its demographics and challenges. And if they've got a cat problem up there, I'm sure if we ask, we've probably got a cat problem down here too. I know we've got a cat dumping problem, and I know we want to protect our taiao. So that's good enough reason to do something about it. But anyway, I hand you over to the able-bodied Debbie Gregory, councillor, who's got no questions for you. Nick Tupura, do you have any questions for Amelia?
Not really a question, but a comment, and a thank you for the thoroughness of your report. And it certainly has provoked this committee to, as the chair has indicated, to extend how far we can extend the mandate of this committee to cover off the issues that you've raised. And because they've been raised so clearly, we certainly will take the time to ensure that we can cover off those points made in the submission. I thank you for that.
Yes, tautoko. So thank you, Amelia. And you're our last submitter. So unless you have anything further to add, I think you've put the proverbial cat amongst the pigeons.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. I would just mention that my submission was fully referenced, and I've linked to every single bylaw of relevance in it. So half the job's done.
Don't worry, my little legal brain was just fizzing when I read your submission. I love nothing more than a reference. Just seriously, it was. Like
I should
Christmas
also add, the Environment Committee of Parliament is deliberating over its report to Parliament tomorrow as a result of all of our submissions to them. So there's lots going on in central government as well. It's slow burn, but hopefully that will enable councils like yourselves to actually proactively address this rather than having the likes of us come and knock on your door.
Yes, well, we pride ourselves on being leaders here in Te Tairawhiti. First to see the sun. All right, thanks, Amelia. Cheerio.
Thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Well, that was the last public submission, and that wraps up the hearing for the, I can't even say it, the other animals bylaw, not the dogs. Yep, that's